A discovery hidden for months. A car reborn from chaos. Verstappen stunned. And before Austin, Red Bull changes everything. Formula One dominance is built on precision, thousands of data points aligning in perfect harmony, one team outsmarting physics itself. For Red Bull, that harmony had been absolute for years. But this season, something broke. What was once an orchestra of engineering perfection began to sound out of tune. The RB21, a car designed to be untouchable, had become unpredictable. On some weekends, it was a rocket. On others, it was a riddle. Every lap looked perfect on the screen, but Verstappen's instincts told a different story. He could feel the inconsistency in his fingertips, the car's rhythm changing mid-corner like a heartbeat skipping a beat. At first, the team dismissed it as setup variance, tire temperatures, wind direction, track evolution. Red Bull had faced anomalies before. But as the races went on, the inconsistencies grew impossible to ignore. In Monaco, the car's rear grip vanished without explanation. In Silverstone, Verstappen's braking zones felt off by millimeters that his muscle memory couldn't reconcile. The engineers checked everything: suspension geometry, power unit calibration, even vibration harmonics from the floor. Nothing explained it. Every graph said the car was fine. Every lap told Verstappen it wasn't. Christian Horner's debriefs became longer, his tone sharper. Pierre Wach, the team's technical director, ordered a full internal audit of the car's aerodynamics. They tore apart wind tunnel data, CFD models, and telemetry overlays, and still, the numbers refused to agree. In some cases, the wind tunnel predicted one aerodynamic load, the CFD model said another. That gap was tiny thousandths of a second in theory, but massive in practice. Formula One operates in the space between those thousandths. When that space goes missing, everything collapses. Verstappen, known for his laser-like feedback, began to lose patience. It's not about the setup, he told engineers after the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's about consistency. The car's balance changes corner to corner. To anyone else, it might have sounded like frustration. To Red Bull, it was prophecy. Verstappen's feel for the car has always bordered on supernatural. If he said something was wrong even if no computer could find it. Behind closed doors, tension grew. The engineering division split into two schools of thought. One side believed the problem was aerodynamic, that the new floor design was producing unstable airflow at high yaw angles. The other side suspected something deeper, a systemic flaw in the simulation-to-track pipeline. The data inputs themselves might be wrong, but suggesting that was borderline heresy inside Red Bull. Their simulation systems were legendary, the most advanced in Formula One, refined over a decade of dominance. To question them was to question the very foundation of the team. Yet quietly, some engineers began to wonder if the unthinkable was true. By mid-season, the pattern was undeniable. Red Bull's advantage was shrinking. McLaren and Ferrari had closed the gap. Verstappen, still leading the championship, was winning through sheer instinct rather than technical superiority. It was visible even on camera: the aggression in his steering, the small corrections mid-corner, the flashes of frustration over team radio. The car was fast, yes, but fragile, unpredictable in a way that forced even Verstappen to drive with caution. It wasn't the Red Bull way. It wasn't dominance. It was survival. Inside the team, the phrase correlation drift began appearing in internal memos. It was subtle at first, then more direct. The numbers from the wind tunnel weren't lining up with reality. The CFD predictions didn't match the track behavior. Red Bull, the team that had mastered the laws of aerodynamics, was now chasing ghosts of its own making. And Verstappen, a driver who depends on absolute trust between man and machine, was beginning to lose faith. The discovery didn't come from a dramatic eureka moment. It came from frustration. After the chaos of early autumn, when Verstappen's feedback began clashing with the data, Red Bull's engineers locked themselves in what they called the chamber, a secure analysis suite deep inside the Milton Keynes factory where every piece of simulation data is stored and cross-referenced. For weeks, they reran aerodynamic models, testing airflow patterns under hundreds of load variations. Still, the numbers refused to match. The car's real-world telemetry showed fluctuations that their systems couldn't replicate. Something invisible was distorting the truth. Pierre Wache, Red Bull's technical director, is known for his calm precision, a man who trusts code more than instinct. But even he began to lose confidence. Late one night, while reviewing airflow coefficient charts from the RB21's wind tunnel sessions, one of Red Bull's senior aerodynamics analysts noticed a subtle discrepancy, a 3-millisecond delay between the tunnel's pressure sampling rate and the CFD correlation timestamp. It was a microscopic timing fault, the kind most engineers would overlook. But at the speeds Formula One cars generate downforce, 3 milliseconds can mean a misread in airflow behavior across the entire car. In simpler terms, Red Bull's software had been syncing data out of phase. They weren't measuring the car's true aerodynamic load, they were measuring an echo of it. When Wache realized what that meant, he reportedly froze. If that timing drift had been present since preseason testing, every aerodynamic update based on those readings would have been slightly off balance. The car wasn't misdesigned. It was misinformed. Red Bull's entire development curve, the way they interpreted performance from simulation to track, had been built on a false rhythm. They'd been perfecting a mistake. The correction came quickly. Within 48 hours, Red Bull's software engineers resynchronized every correlation module across their simulation chain, from the virtual wind tunnel to the full-scale tunnel in Bedford, and finally to the on-track data stream. The effect was immediate and stunning. The RB21's aerodynamic model recalibrated itself, revealing efficiency margins that had never shown up before. Where the team once saw instability, they now saw hidden potential. The car's balance map flattened, its center of pressure stabilized, and its simulated lap times dropped dramatically. Red Bull hadn't just fixed an error, they'd unlocked performance they didn't know existed. When Verstappen tested the updated setup at the factory simulator, the difference was visceral. "This is it," he said. "This is what it's supposed to feel like." The RB21 finally responded with the precision he remembered from his record-breaking 2023 season, every steering input, every braking point, every throttle correction aligning perfectly with his instincts. It wasn't new speed, it was rediscovered truth. Verstappen wasn't adapting to the car anymore. The car was adapting to him. Technically, the correction revealed something extraordinary about Red Bull's design philosophy. The RB21's floor and diffuser, its greatest weapons, had been working harder than the data showed. The car had been generating more downforce than the team believed, but because the system was reading those loads late, the engineers had been compensating unnecessarily with setup changes that actually destabilized the balance. By fixing the timing correlation, they eliminated the need for those compromises. The car no longer oversteered mid-corner. It no longer snapped at high yaw. The flow structures along the floor edge were now symmetrical, stable, and perfectly aligned with the diffuser's wake. Christian Horner called it our invisible upgrade. No new parts. No new aero package. Just the truth finally visible. Red Bull's engineers described the feeling as relief mixed with embarrassment. They hadn't reinvented the car, they had corrected reality. But in Formula One, reality is everything. A team can spend millions chasing speed that already exists but can't be seen. That was Red Bull's nightmare for half the season. And now, it's their weapon. The meeting where everything changed didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened in Red Bull's simulator control room, a quiet space filled with cold blue light, screens flickering with telemetry lines that only a handful of people on Earth can truly read. Max Verstappen walked in expecting another debrief, another round of explanations about inconsistency, setup changes, and wind tunnel drift. What he saw instead left him speechless. On the central monitor was a comparison between the car's predicted performance and its real performance since Bahrain. The two lines, one red, one blue, were supposed to overlap. For 6 months, they hadn't. Now, after the correction, they did. The gap between them told the story of an entire lost season. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then one of the engineers broke the silence. "This is what we've been missing." Verstappen leaned closer, eyes scanning the data. The difference was staggering, almost half a second of unclaimed performance hidden in the numbers. "So we weren't slow," he finally said. "We just didn't know how fast we were." It was said half in disbelief, half in anger. For a driver who measures his life in tenths of a second, learning that his car had been running below its potential for half a season was like discovering he'd been driving with the brakes half on. Pierre Watch, standing beside him, confirmed the finding. "The car's never been wrong," he said. "Our measurements were." Verstappen didn't react immediately. He just stared at the graphs again, his face unreadable. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, "We've been fighting ghosts." The room fell silent again. Everyone in it knew what that meant, that all the frustrations, the complaints, the radio outbursts, the sleepless nights in engineering meetings, all of it had been a battle against a problem that didn't exist. The car hadn't betrayed him. The numbers had. When Christian Horner was briefed later that afternoon, his response was characteristically calm but edged with excitement. "So this," he said, pointing at the simulation graph, "is the real RB21? Watch nodded. Then, Horner replied, "We've only just started our season." It was a bold statement, but not an exaggeration. For the first time in months, Red Bull had regained the thing every great team needs more than speed belief. The confusion that had haunted them was gone. The engineers were smiling again. The drivers were listening again. The world champions finally felt like world champions. The first on-track proof came just a few days later in a private simulation test at Silverstone. Using the recalibrated aerodynamic map, Verstappen ran a full race distance program on the simulator. The car felt alive again. "It's stable everywhere," he told his engineer. "You can lean on it now." The throttle response was sharper, the steering more precise. The RB21 wasn't just fast, it was predictable, balanced, obedient. Verstappen's tone changed from frustration to focus. He wanted more laps, more fine-tuning, more perfection. After months of confusion, his confidence had returned, and with it, the quiet danger that defines his best form. When the team gathered later that evening, the mood was electric. What began as disbelief had turned into motivation. "We've been running at 80%, one mechanic said, shaking his head. "Imagine what happens now." Verstappen didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just looked around the room and gave a small, knowing smile, the kind of smile that doesn't celebrate victory but anticipates it. That expression told everyone at Red Bull exactly what they needed to hear: the fight was back on. By the time Red Bull arrived in Austin, the whispers had already spread through the paddock. Rivals noticed the quiet confidence in Verstappen's body language. The frustration was gone, replaced by the calm certainty of a man who knows something no one else does. And he did. Red Bull's discovery wasn't just a fix, it was a reset. They had solved the unsolvable. The car that had stumbled through the first half of the season was about to unleash its full potential, just as the championship fight was tightening.